So, about 2 years ago, I made a video, and it was my first impressions with Shadowlands. And I thought that we would go and watch it and see how things evolved.
What's up, boys? So today I wanted to talk to you all about Shadowlands. The expansion's been out for a few weeks now. The raid just came out this week, and I wanted to give you all my first impressions of the expansion and just in general my experiences with it. Now, before I get into that, I do want to say one thing, is that you guys probably haven't seen a whole lot of videos from this channel recently. It's not really because I'm lazy, well, that's one reason, but on top of that, it's also because the camera and the mic on my old phone broke, and I wasn't able to record without the audio being distorted. I tried to fix it a number of different ways.
No, I remember this.
Took it to the store, and they told me I basically needed to get a new phone, or there'd be no way for it to really
That's
work
this phone.
and have the audio
This
be
is the
recorded
new phone.
properly. So because of that, I bought a new phone, and so hopefully now the quality is a little bit better, and we'll be able to record videos and put out a little bit more content in the near future here. So I just wanted to make that kind of clear, because I know some people have been wondering why I haven't put out any videos recently.
Okay, let's move on.
That is why. So anyway,
okay, good.
Shadowlands, the
Yeah.
expansion. The release for Shadowlands, I think, went relatively very well. There were, of course, a few servers, I think, on the EU that had a huge amount of problems.
Bro, the same shit happened in Dragonflight. That's the exact same thing that I said in Dragonflight. Everything went pretty much well, except for there were a few servers on the EU that didn't work.
Launch,
Yep.
and I think this has been the case for pretty much every launch, whereas there's a few of the more highly populated servers.
Yeah.
And it seems like this happens more or less on EU more often, but
It's because they have, there's too much government over there. That's why the servers don't work.
you know, for my server, Kel'Thuzad, there wasn't really anything like that. My launch experience was really smooth. I didn't really have any DCs. I think the leveling experience was decent enough.
Yep.
And I think that Blizzard, at this point, they kind of just make the leveling experience really cosmetic. It's more or less just an introduction to the lore of the game, and you basically play through all the different covenants, and you learn what they're about, and then later on you make a decision on which one you want to go with.
So that's about the same with Dragonflight. All right, all about the same.
And I think that the leveling experience in that way does make a lot of sense, and it just works. Now, whenever you talk about like the Threads of Fate thing, which is whenever you can level alts, I did hear that was pretty grindy and not.
It was fucking garbage. That's what it was. It wasn't very grindy. It was fucking trash. It sucked dick.
Really is fun and enjoyable, and also sometimes it would take longer for some people. I'm not sure how optimization is going to change that, but in general, I'd say the leveling for the expansion is pretty good. And I think that's probably one way that I could describe most of the things in Shadowlands is pretty good. I feel like...
And so basically at this point, this was like right whenever Castle Nathria came out, the PvP season just came out, and I think that that's true. Like, at the beginning of Shadowlands, the general sentiment was that the expansion was pretty good. Yes, Nathria was a good raid. The beginning of the first arena season was fun. Everything was pretty good. But then...
this expansion's been a pleasant surprise for a lot of people.
So I said the exact same thing about Dragonflight. I just want to make sure that you guys keep that in mind. Yes, it's been a pleasant surprise for a lot of people. Yes. The reason why people were happy about Shadowlands compared to the one before it was because Shadowlands had PvP vendors, for example.
Know that, especially out of BFA, the game seemed... Rich used this word the other day, and I really can't stop thinking about it. The expansion BFA seemed very desperate. They just tried to keep you logging on, keep you playing the game by just creating these really weird contrived systems to keep you doing it. And it's incredible to see the difference and the juxtaposition between that philosophy and the philosophy of Shadowlands. And I think
that's also exactly what I said about Dragonflight. Yeah, so basically this was before we had to... Yeah. So I said this about Dragonflight as well. It always starts good. Yep, okay.
Really, what comes out of that is the confidence of Shadowlands that Blizzard really had with releasing it. If you look at the way that they've released the content for Shadowlands and they've incentivized it, many of the things in the game aren't really necessary to do, but people still want to do them because...
So I also said this about Dragonflight. This is one of the things that I thought was good about Dragonflight, and this is something that I did say about Dragonflight as well.
They're fun. And I
Yeah.
feel like that's such a it's a weird situation to be in where that's such a novel concept, but here we are.
So in the dragon in the dragon fight video, I said the same thing.
You have all of these different, like the Ember Court, like build your own abomination, like all of these little covenant features and just little extra things that you can do with your character that people really want to do because they enjoy playing the game.
Which is true. I actually thought that the Covenant extra features and the fact that they weren't power related like many things were in BFA and Legion, I thought this was a tremendous improvement, and it was much better than what we had before. Yeah, like 100%. Yes, it was absolutely better than BFA. It was. I remember you thought Torghast was going to be good, and I knew it was going to be another chore. Well, the thing is, you can think Torghast is good, but you can think forcing people to do it every week is bad. Like, both of these things can be true.
And I feel like that's just such a complete different paradigm shift versus what we had in BFA and also in Legion too. I think in Legion the expansion was a good expansion, but overall it did have some of those, I guess you could say, mandatory fun mechanisms. And Shadowlands, I think, doesn't really have that much mandatory fun.
So basically, that turned out to not be true. At the beginning, it was, and then it got worse. We had things like Korthia, other daily things, etc. But I do think that if you want to look at a trajectory, right, let's do this, okay? This is... mandatory fun. Okay, there we go. So this is the mandatory fun graph, okay? So we have let's see, it'd be like this and then like this, okay? So well, I'll go ahead and I'll put some dots on here so you guys can see it all. Size, we'll do this one, okay? So all right, and then for text, all right, so this is Legion, and I just want you guys to see kind of where I'm at here. So this is Legion mandatory fun, BFA, Shadowlands, and then this is Dragonflight. So I do think that overall, Shadowlands did have less mandatory fun than BFA or Legion, but Dragonflight has substantially less mandatory fun. You see what I'm saying? For now. Yeah, of course, for now.
It just has fun, and you can engage in it if you want to, and if you don't have to. And I feel like the options and the availability of those options really, I think, is what's made this expansion such a refreshing experience for a lot of people.
So I said the same thing in my Dragonflight video.
Whenever you look at a lot of PvPers especially, I think that you've seen so much more of a revitalization of PvPers' enthusiasm for the game versus Raiders. I mean, Raiders, you know...
Which is very true. PvPers were extremely happy about Shadowlands on release. I remember seeing people constantly posting about it. Everybody was very happy because you have to keep in mind contextually, Shadowlands was whenever we had deterministic PvP gearing and PvP vendors were added back into the game.
Castle Nathria, we'll talk about that. Castle Nathria is a good raid, right? I mean,
it is.
I thought normal was overtuned, but
it was.
Overall, like, heroic mode,
they nerfed it like 5 times.
It's fucking awesome. Like, I love doing heroic mode Castle Nathria, and it was an enjoyable experience. And this is coming from somebody who really just raids for gear, and so even that was it was a little bit fulfilling even for me. So
I think the reason why also a lot of PvPers enjoyed Shadowlands at the beginning was because during Shadowlands, they didn't have a lot of the... at the beginning of Shadowlands, they didn't have a lot of alts that they had to honor cap on to upgrade all of their gear. They were just doing these things passively through playing the game. So the pain points of leveling up alts and then having to honor gear all of your alts through upgrading every single piece of gear, this wasn't evident yet because people hadn't played through it with more than one character at this point.
I think that you see the way that PvPers especially, because these are people who very often play on multiple characters, they'll play on multiple alts, etc. as a PvPer. And this was something that was very doable back in Burning Crusade to a lesser extent because of the leveling requirements, but in Cataclysm and Mists of Pandaria, in Warlords of Draenor, and even to a certain extent in Legion, but mainly in those earlier expansions, Wrath 2, you'd see a lot of people that would make multiple characters throughout the expansion, and they would play those characters in PvP and just keep up with them and enjoy playing those characters and doing different things. And I think that...
Yeah, very, very true. It's a good point that I brought up. And yeah, I mean, the thing is with Shadowlands, yes, it made it a lot easier to play alts in Shadowlands comparatively with BFA, and I think also comparatively with Legion, probably to a lesser extent with Legion because they had stat templates, which made it easier. But overall, I do think that compared to Dragonflight, Shadowlands was extremely hard. And also, like, the amount of extra work you had to go through by the time the expansion was, like, closer to finished, it was much more because there were so many other systems and things added into the game, especially in 9.1.
Whenever you compare that to, you know, like in Cataclysm or in Mists of Pandaria, where you can maintain, you know, 5 through at least, you know, 3, 4, 5 characters, that same amount of time investment went into just maintaining one character in BFA.
Which is true.
And you didn't...
That's another great point that I brought up.
Feel 3 to 5 times better about having that one main character. Yes, of course, the max level corruptions and having all of the different stat amps were cool, but at the end of the day, sometimes people want to do different things, and I feel like Blizzard kind of treating the alt experience like a extension of the player experience is a good idea. And I think that Blizzard making more things, you know, not creating gateway or not gates for things, right?
Yeah, I've been saying the same thing too, actually. And yeah, I mean, they need to make it easier to play alts. Absolutely, 100%.
Things are time gated in Shadowlands. It's definitely true. Things like Renown, you know, the Covenant campaign, which is tied to Renown, Torghast release cycle, and a number of things other than that have been time gated. And I know this might be an unpopular opinion, but I don't really necessarily hate that. I think that it's important to pace players, and I feel...
I agree with this too. I also think that time gating, even in Dragonflight, like, they have time gating in Dragonflight, it's just harder to see it. The time gating in Dragonflight is that you can only do so many activities that will generate, you know, different types of reputation rewards per week, per day, before it becomes extremely time inefficient. So yes, there are a lot of things that are still time gated in Dragonflight, but it's not as bad. It's better now than it has been in, I think, Shadowlands, and I think that it was in BFA especially. And time gating was really bad in BFA, and Shadowlands was kind of annoying too, especially with like the creation catalyst and shit.
Like WoW has always had the problem of buzzwords, where whenever the community comes up with a buzzword, like I think I used this example too, borrowed power, and time gating, etc., they look at anything that falls into that category or that can be defined by that word, and they automatically correlate it to being bad.
And this is true also. This is something that you guys saw, for example, yesterday or the day before whenever Rich and I did Allcraft, and I was talking about would it be okay if they added borrowed power into WoW like later on, and I said yes, it would be okay. And a lot of people in chat were not happy about my opinion regarding that because they thought that borrowed power was like something that's like fundamentally bad. But you forget that trinkets and tier set bonuses, for example, and even, you know, like other types of like other weird effects that you have, different other interactions you can have with players like the Shah gems, legendary cloak, etc. These are all borrowed power as well. So it depends on like what the extent of the borrowed power is, how hard it is to get it, and how much customization it provides.
I think that Shadowlands does do a good job of pacing players and giving people enough content that they can do without necessarily making them feel like they're overwhelmed. And this is
which during at this point in Shadowlands, proportionally to BFA, this was absolutely true because BFA had way more mandatory activities than Shadowlands did. This is like just a 100% true, a 100% real.
Of course, for somebody who continuously plays, I think for a person coming into the game now, they're going to have even more things to do because they have all those backlog of things that they didn't do at the beginning of the expansion already, and I think that's going to continue to be the case. And then also on top of that, it's weird for me to see a lot of my friends, especially people who are more of the they're more of the casual player, or not necessarily casual player, but they don't, let's just say they don't give a fuck about the lore. And it's really cool to see them even wanting to look and see, well, what is this Night Fae quest line? Because I feel like Night Fae is always like, it's always been like the meme, right?
It's the one for furries and girls. Yeah, let's just be honest here. So yes, Night Fae was the quest line for Night Fae was good, and I think this is something that is objectively true. It was true then, it's true now. The Night Fae quest line was very good, and I think most of the Covenant quest lines, the Revendreth one was also good.
It's like, oh, the furries, the Night Fae, okay, whatever, right? Oh, you make a garden, it's just Animal Crossing, etc. But the fact is that the zones in Shadowlands, and Ardenweald especially, is just so incredibly good that people actually want to try out the campaign, even though it's supposedly for furries, basically. At least
That's a good point. That's exactly what I said.
that's the joke. So
It's
I
not
think
a joke.
Blizzard really knocked it out of the park with the art, and I think the art does seem a lot more inspired than the BFA art. I think there were a lot of things in BFA that actually did look visually really cool. I felt like Crucible of Storms was really cool. And a few other things were too, like Stormsong Valley, Drustvar, and even parts of Zuldazar I really did enjoy. But whenever I compare that to the breadth of what the what the Shadowlands zones have to offer, it's night and day.
I agree with this. I think that, yeah, compared to BFA, Shadowlands zones were better, minus Maldraxxus. I thought Maldraxxus was cringe, but, Ardenweald and Revendreth were very good.
Like there's just so many different distinct art styles that are used in Shadowlands that it really does make the expansion feel like it's 4 completely different zones with Shadowlands, Revendreth.
Yeah, and that was the problem, is that this is one thing that I think we didn't realize this early into Shadowlands, is that the fact that all of the zones were disconnected in such a abstract way, or like such a defined way. It's like you cannot go from one zone to another zone. You have to go from one zone to Oribos to the other zone every single time if you want to travel around. I think that we didn't realize at this point in the expansion how tiresome and cumbersome that was. So, like, as the expansion went on, the annoyance of that really built up. And then also the disconnected nature of it is that, like, one of the biggest things that WoW had as a selling point in 2004 was the fact that you didn't have any loading screens to go between zones. And somehow Shadowlands regressed below 2004. That now you need to go through multiple loading screens just to get from one zone to another in Shadowlands. And I'm glad to see that change with the Dragon Isles. It's a very positive thing.
And the Maw, even, I'm not a big fan of the Maw, but overall the Maw I think will improve in time as time goes on, whenever more people get the mounts, etc. And it doesn't take quite as long to do all the things there. I think the Maw is still really in beta, and so hopefully Blizzard will be able to fix that before the first patch.
Well, they kind of did. I feel like, yes, they did kind of do that. Because, for example, they added it to where you can use all of your mounts in the Maw, and they got rid of the Eye of the Jailer. So this is actually true that they fixed the Maw. Well, they did not fix the Maw, but they dramatically improved the Maw. Am I crazy here? Yeah, I think they did make it better in 9.1.
Or at least with the first patch. But anyway, I think the art style, it's always been another meme that the art team carries Blizzard, and I think Shadowlands is the reason why that is a rule. And Shadowlands is the reason why that is one of the main things that people always say.
I think Ardenweald, Revendreth, the zones were really good.
The art is incredible. There's such distinct differences between something like Ardenweald versus Revendreth. And they're 2 distinctly beautiful zones that have a completely different theme to them. And I think that's incredibly impressive, and I think Blizzard did a great job. Whenever I talk about the class gameplay, I think that the classes do feel a lot better to play than they did in BFA. And one of the big reasons for that is it feels like a lot more of your damage is actually tied to the buttons that you press on your character, rather than random and incidental damage that comes through procs or...
This was true. In BFA, it was awful. I think it's a little bit better in Dragonflight now. Because in Shadowlands, you still had a lot of, like, especially once we got, like, farther into the expansion, there were, like, all of these other empowering devices that got really annoying.
Like your Azurite necklace, or through your trinkets, or through your Azurite armor. And BFA had a problem where basically BFA had a power creep problem similar to what Mists of Pandaria had that Blizzard felt like they had to solve. And I think that Blizzard's solution to BFA's power creep problem, because you look at like basically from Mists of Pandaria to WoD, everybody felt like their character got like massively downgraded. And at least, I don't know, I'm a warrior. Maybe it's just me, but that's really, really, really how I felt.
And you remember, like, recently with Dragonflight, they actually expressly said that it felt bad to, like, lose all of your borrowed power. And that's why they're focusing on having more evergreen systems like the talent tree. So, like, Shadowlands, this still happened with, like, Covenant abilities, conduits, and soulbinds and everything. So they're trying to get rid of that.
And I was salty about it the whole expansion. And then if you look at the power downgrade between BFA down to Shadowlands, there's probably an equal power downgrade in terms of what players were capable of doing, like their survivability, the things, you know, their damage, their
it sucked.
Burst damage, etc. But really, whenever you think about it, Shadowlands, I think, feels better than BFA in terms of playing my character. And the reason why...
What do you guys think? Was I right about this or not? Like, I personally think that it might have been better to play your character if you had, like, full corruptions and shit like that, definitely. But overall, I had more fun playing my character at the beginning of Shadowlands versus at the end of BFA.
And I enjoy playing my character more in Shadowlands is that it feels whenever I hit Mortal Strike, or whenever I hit Condemn, which is one of my... I want Vent Theory. And
yeah, so I was happy about that.
And I see somebody's health go down just by like this much on my screen. I'm like, that was my button. That was the button that I pressed on my character, and it did that damage.
And this was a huge issue. Like, this had happened for like multiple expansions at this point, that a lot of your damage was incidental and out of your control. So Blizzard fixing this in Shadowlands was a huge positive.
Getting that feedback is so much more rewarding on a just second-to-second level.
And I think that they improved on this even more in Dragonflight by making it to where all of the things that you pretty much have that, like, give you better, like, character abilities, these are all things that you can control by choosing those talents. You can choose talents that make your character stronger, rather than, like, getting, like, random upgrades or, like, having some, like, conduit or something like that. It's all inside of one system.
Then just kind of waiting, and basically in BFA, you've got a handful of dice, and you're just going to throw your dice at somebody.
The preach video.
And you've got, you know, the attack, you've got the corruption proc, you've got the Azurite proc, you've got the trinket proc, you've got the Azurite armor proc, you've got the necklace proc, and you've got the cloak proc, and it's like, you know, how many of these are going to roll a 20 and how many aren't? And
isn't it weird to think that BFA came out 4 years ago? Like, I'm just thinking about that watching this video, like how much different everything was 4 years ago whenever BFA released. Like, that was before Classic.
Really, playing that kind of a game, it's just so disconnected, and it's so removed from the very, very clean and, I think, rewarding feel that something like Classic WoW has. I think whenever you play a warrior in a BG in Classic WoW, if you're not getting, you know, fighting a 1v1 against a Frost Mage, and you're actually doing a team fight, and you've got healers, and you're playing your character, it feels fucking amazing. And why does it feel amazing? Because you get that visual feedback of what you're doing. You really see the impact of your character.
Well, you could see it so well in Shadowlands, you could see people evaporate off of the screen. Like, I 100% think that PvP was better in Shadowlands than it was in BFA. Shadowlands PvP was tremendously better.
And I think that's one of the kind of types of, I would say, subtle genius of Classic that Shadowlands really did, I think, do a relatively good job in capturing. Yeah. I don't really think that you can ever have, you know, you can never step into the same river twice. You can never really reclaim what Classic had. I don't think that Shadowlands really is attempting to do that, but I think that it's attempting to...
I think Dragonflight is, to an extent,
the essence of what Classic really gave people in that way, and give it back to them again. And I think with the feel of classes and the feel of gameplay, especially in PvP, I really enjoy doing it on just a fun level. For example, I've done now more RBGs in I think at this point I've done more RBGs in Shadowlands than I did in all of BFA.
And I never probably did another one after this video. Like, I did do a little bit of RBGs, but I kind of stopped. I don't really even know why. But yeah, that was like pretty much the last one I did.
Think about that. And I look forward to doing more. It's awesome. So on top of that, let's talk about a little bit more of the other things. Let's talk about Mythic Plus. I haven't really done a whole lot of Mythic Plus, and by a whole lot, I mean any. I feel like the dungeons are really fun. Mythic Plus has never been something that's really compelled me or really interested me.
Same.
But I think the seasonal affix does seem really interesting, and
Prideful
I'm really
was
curious
cool
to see what that's actually going to be like in terms of just everyday play. But overall, what I've heard from people is that they've been enjoying it a lot, and so it seems like the dungeons to me in Shadowlands do seem better, and it doesn't seem like a lot of the mob packs are overloaded with abilities like they felt like in BFA.
So that turned out to not be true. Yeah, and it seems like, yeah, so we thought it was not true. I think Dragonflight also has the same problem, where like Dragonflight has like each trash mob has 3 different fucking abilities. And by the way, one of the best tanks in the world. I mean, sorry, it's just, you know, usually just best tanks. It's warrior, you know, it makes sense. Agrees with me on this. I think a lot of serious players agree with me on this. That there's too many fucking mechanics. It's so tiresome dealing with all the mechanics.
Trash pack was stressful because you had to worry about like 8 different things that could happen.
Yeah, it's just the same problem.
BFA, it's a little bit more Shadowlands, excuse me. It's a little bit more relaxed, and I actually prefer that. And I also think the seasonal affix, the prideful affix, is really interesting and cool because it actually gives players a bonus to their damage on top of being a little bit of a detriment as well. And I think that adds a complete...
Afaru, thank you very much for the 20 gifted subs. I appreciate that. Thank you, man. Yeah, I think this is a big factor, is that in Shadowlands, we actually had the ability to use the affixes to our advantage. It was the first time they used like Kiss Curse affixes, where you would kill the prideful mob, and then you would like pop hero and try to burn down a boss. That was really cool.
Completely different dynamic to it. I think over the course of BFA, Blizzard got a lot smarter with the affixes, and I think their final draft with that, which was Awakened, which was the 8.3 affix, was incredibly genius. Like, that was a mastercrafted affix. Not only did it, you know, undercut the rogue meta, but it just completely changed the way people did dungeons. And I think, honestly, whoever designed that affix, I want that person designing more things in the game. Whoever did that's a genius.
Yes.
But overall, I think that the new Shadowlands affix is really interesting too, and I look forward to doing it. I just haven't really had time to do it because I've been doing other things. So PvP seems really great. I've talked to a lot of people about PvP, and I think all of the, you know, the usual suspects that play PvP all pretty much agree that they really enjoy playing it in Shadowlands much more than they did in BFA. And
I think this is something that remained to be true. Like, this was true for the entirety of Shadowlands. Most people that I had talked to liked it more than BFA. Yep.
I think that's awesome to hear from me personally.
Yeah, Season 1 Shadowlands was just good. Yeah, it was good. The reason why Season 1 at the beginning of Shadowlands got worse is because there was no content. Like, 9.1 should have come out like 4 months earlier.
Because, you know, a lot of you guys might not really know this, but I originally started as a PvPer because I never had time to raid because my parents were divorced. So I couldn't raid on certain weekdays because I'd be over at my dad's. So I'd have to PvP to get my gear instead. So I started off that way, and to see other people, you know, to recapture that enjoyment again is, it's in a way very nostalgic for me. So
I think this was a huge positive with Shadowlands, and I actually was right about this part, that being able to buy your gear from a vendor was way better than getting RNG items from Azerite boxes in BFA or RNG rewards from Legion. This was a huge improvement.
Stones are great. Raid Castle Nathria. Let's talk about Castle Nathria, okay? Like, listen, I'm a big Castlevania simp. I remember I watched the Netflix series. I loved it. I had the games back whenever I was a kid. I loved the aesthetic of it, and The Victorian Gothic aesthetic, it's just so cool to me, and especially the Venthyr and how just arrogant.
I think this part did age very well, too. Castle Nathria is still well regarded, and it's considered probably, by a lot of people, I would say, am I right about this? The best expansion of the raid? Or best raid of the expansion?
Prideful they are, and just how just fucking in your face assholes they are. It's great. I love it. They make amazing characters, and I think Denathrius is an amazing villain in the story too. And I think in a way he's more compelling to me than the jailer is. But
I didn't know. I didn't know how right I would be with this. Yeah, I had no idea what was to come.
Regardless, I think the tuning of the raid, I did feel like was a little bit intense for normal mode, and that kind of did it. It made me feel like I didn't like the raid as much as other people did, which was kind of weird because usually
the reason why normal mode Castle Nathria was bad, and this is kind of what the issue is that whenever you make a normal mode and heroic mode version of a raid really hard, what you do is you punish groups that aren't really that organized. And like if you have like these like fail mechanics that can wipe the whole raid whenever you fuck something up in a normal mode fight, then why wouldn't somebody just go and do heroic whenever that's the same thing but you get better gear? So it makes it to where normal mode has no real distinct advantage over any other type of content. So like, why would you go out of your way to do this if you could just go and fucking ignore it and just do heroic instead, or do mythic plus instead, something that's way easier? So just have no mechanics. I think that, yeah, normal mode and heroic mode to a lesser extent should be pretty fucking easy. You shouldn't have mechanics where like if one person or two people do it wrong, the raid wipes. Yeah, I don't think that's good for the game.
Actually, I really enjoy the raid. I remember...
Because the thing is, like, you can say, oh, that's good, that's the way the raid should be. Yeah, but nobody's going to do them. Because they're just going to do Mythic Plus instead because it's easier. That's what's going to happen. So you can't say, like, you can't have, like, this ideology, like, oh, well, they need to learn how to raid. They're not going to. They're gonna take the path of least resistance. And if you have that many fail points in a casual raid, it's just a recipe for frustration.
I said Tomb of Sargeras was an incredible raid, and a lot of people disagreed with me. And the reason for that is because Mythic. They were the ones doing Mythic, and I was just doing Heroic and having a good time. So for me, it was awesome. But if you're doing Mythic, it fucking sucked. And the funny thing is, it's the opposite now, is that normal, for a lot of people sucked, but I went and I did heroic, and I had 1,000 times more fun.
Heroic felt much more rewarding, and this is something that I hope they do with the new raid, is they actually make the new raid rewarding for people to do normal mode and heroic mode. Because whenever you're doing normal mode and you have all of these like fucking fail mechanics and these fucking hard mechanics that everybody has to execute in the right way, what you end up doing is you make it to where all of these people, it's like at that point, why wouldn't you just go and do heroic? Like, you have all the same mechanics. Yeah, things do a bit more damage, but you get way better gear.
Like, I was getting more rewarded for my time investment, for the level of...
whenever I did normal, I just felt like I was wasting my time. Like, why am I even doing this? The gear isn't even that good anyway.
Gameplay that I was kind of putting into it. But, getting 200 gear after wiping for 2 hours with, 3 separate one-shot mechanics on a normal mode, I'm like, yeah, fuck this. But heroic, it sounds great. I'm happy. This is awesome. So
it's proportional to your investment.
It's kind of funny the way that Blizzard did that, and obviously I think it was unintended because they nerfed a lot of this stuff, but it's weird that it could motivate somebody like me to just want to do a harder difficulty because it just felt more rewarding. And it's weird because of course Shadowlands took a completely different paradigm.
That's how ratings should be.
Gear and what gear acquisition really means in Shadowlands. And because of that, I think that we've seen a lot of people really enjoying the level of gear that you get, and also the permanence of that gear.
I think this is something that turned out to be true for Shadowlands. This definitely turned out to be true. Whenever all is said and done, Shadowlands, you could actually have a BIS list. You could actually finish your gear. You could get everything you wanted and be done with it. And aside from the last patch in BFA, a very small period of time, this was not true in BFA, and it was certainly not true in Legion.
Example, I got Skulker's Wing from the first boss in Heroic Castle Nathria.
I remember this.
I
got that one too.
Until I get the Mythic version. And that's really cool to just have that there.
I never got
and
the mythic
I look
version.
at that item, and that is the item. There's not a I can put a socket on it myself. I don't know if you can do
Which
it
was a big improvement again with Shadowlands, is that you were able to apply sockets and they were no longer RNG.
on trinkets. Anyway, it
Another
doesn't
great
matter.
point by me.
I can, maybe put a socket on it if it's a certain piece of gear. But other than that, it is what it is. And that is great. And I can just sit there and relax. And after I reach an apex on my warrior, and I have all the gear that I want, and maybe I'm
I can quit the game and play Final Fantasy, which is what happened.
done farming all the mounts that I want, which seems at this point probably not going to happen. But
true.
other than that,
I was right about
I can
that.
go play my other characters. I can go do
Yeah, I never played any other character. I just started playing Final Fantasy. Yep, that's what it was.
something else in the game. And I think Blizzard having the confidence to not try to attach players into these mandatory fun mechanisms like BFA had shows how confident they were in this expansion. And the ironic thing about that was I think that that's also...
Yeah, so that didn't happen. I was wrong about this one. Ooh, I was wrong about this one, especially 9.1, man. Oh my god, that was a cock. That was not good.
in the Covenant system.
Yeah.
Now, I was never a fan of the way that the Covenant system was going to be released. and I'm still
Domination
not.
sockets.
I'd like to be able to use different abilities. It's not even a 1% argument. I just want to be able to use the Kyrian Spear sometimes. I got killed by a warrior in Arena, and he used the Ardenweald warrior ability. And I'm like, wow, that's badass. I want to try that out and see what it's like. And I'd like to be able to try out these abilities without having to, lose something for it and have to spend a large time, like, reinvesting back into Venthyr or whatever.
And this was an issue, like, with Covenants. Covenants were bad right from the beginning. I was right about this. They eventually changed it because they realized that I was right, like always.
Overall, the Covenant abilities aren't nearly as impactful as they were in the beta, and I think because of that, the features of Covenants that people were really worried about were very much toned down. And it's the same thing with the conduits as well, soul binds, and conduits to a lesser extent. They were toned down quite a bit, and I think because
they were proportionally, but if you looked at the breakdowns, especially as people got more time into the expansion, pretty much everybody was playing the exact same thing, which was what the concern about the Covenants was at the beginning, and that also turned out to be correct.
that toning down, players are a little bit more okay with them being a little bit of a player power upgrade because they don't really seem influential enough for most people to really care about them and for them to seem to be as defining as players thought they would be. I think also, like, this is going to be something that will become less and less of the case because as people learn more about the game and as people theorycraft more about the game, you will see further and further differentiation between like mid-level players and high-level players because there's just so many things that you can optimize in Shadowlands.
Which became very true. That became even more true with like soulbinds, conduits, legendaries, fucking covenants, everything, gearing, trinkets. Yeah, like the difference between a good player and a bad player got way bigger because you had so many different ways that you could optimize. Now in Dragonflight, they improved this even more where we pretty much have most of our power coming directly from the talent system.
Then whenever obviously they reach that point, there will become more of an expectation to further optimize your character, which of course there's, it's a double-edged sword. Having these cool things that you can optimize also means that, WoW as a game, and I've said this before, WoW as a game probably has one of the strongest meta adherence cultures possible. And
I think this continues to be true. Even throughout all of Shadowlands and into BFA, into Dragonlance. The other day I was doing a battleground, and by the other day I mean literally last night. I was doing a battleground and every single warrior was running Annihilator Fury. Every single one. This is just like, because everybody saw the video, I'm running Annihilator Fury too. Like, I'm not any better than they are. I'm doing the exact same fucking thing because everybody's going to copy paste the best thing. And this is just generally how Warcraft goes. And I think the reason why there's such a strong meta adherence to Warcraft is because not only do you have to play with other people in order to achieve things, but failing to achieve those things is much more punishing in WoW than it is in a game like Final Fantasy or Lost Ark. Like in Lost Ark, you don't lose as much time and as much resources whenever you lose to a boss, whenever you die to a boss. It's the same thing as Final Fantasy. Whenever you die to a boss, you just respawn right in front of them again, you do it again. But with WoW, you have to rebuff, you have to run back, you have to wait for people to get there. There are more people in the raid. There are so many other logistical challenges that exist in WoW. It makes making sure that you invite everybody into the raid more important, that they're not going to waste even an additional amount of time. Like I've done this before and I'll do it again. So if you're going to be, so let's look at three different games, okay? And we're gonna do WoW, FF14, Lost Ark, okay? So in Final Fantasy 14, you spend this much time doing the boss, and you spend probably, I mean, I would say even less. I'm gonna go back. I'm gonna change this again. You probably spend about this much time, and this is like mandatory time, not like strategizing or anything like that. Of course, you can spend other time strategizing. So this is how much time you spend actually pulling the boss. Okay, so let me see here. And then right here we have, this is logistics, okay? Logistics. So this is like, you know, making sure we have everybody in the raid, getting your buff, etc. It's a very, very small period of time in Final Fantasy. In Lost Ark, that amount is probably like right here. And this is the amount of time that you spend actually, I'm not going to write it down every single time, but you guys can generally get the idea. This is the time that you spend actually pulling the boss. In WoW, it's about like this. And I would say actually pulling the boss for good guilds is like this. Or sorry, for good guilds is like this, and for bad guilds, or sorry, for good guilds is like this, and for bad guilds is like this. So I'll type it again just so everybody understands. Actually pulling the boss. So this is what the issue with WoW is. And this is why there's such a strong meta adherence to WoW. Is that you have so much mandatory logistical time. You have so much mandatory logistical time in WoW that you have to spend. Trash mobs, travel time, summoning, getting 20 players instead of, or like, you know, 10 players instead of 4 or 8 with Lost Ark. Getting 20 players to do Mythic versus getting a smaller amount in Final Fantasy or Lost Ark again. So you, repairs, buffs, fucking food buffs. You have to do every single pull. Like, you see, like, all of the different things that waste your time in WoW. And whenever that time is getting wasted in WoW, it makes playing the game feel so much worse. And the result of that is that people are much less tolerant of fuck-ups. They are way less tolerant of fuck-ups in WoW because whenever you have a fuck-up, that time wasting is magnified by the systems in the game. You see what I'm saying? Wipe makes it worse. And this is a problem that is engineered into the game. This is not a player base is the problem situation. This is Blizzard coded this into the game. There is no reason, for example, that you can't respawn right in front of a boss. There is no reason that you cannot have a summoning stone right there next to every single boss. There is no reason that only warlocks can use summoning stones. There should be multiple classes that can do this, like a mage or like a druid or something like that. These are negative things that that add friction to the game that provide, in my opinion, minimal to no value. You want 0 risk, all reward? So do you think that it's zero risk in Final Fantasy whenever you have a fight that takes like 7 days to beat by one group? You're fucking stupid. No, that's not what I'm saying at all. What's the risk is dying of old age by the time that you pull the next boss. What kind of a risk is that? That's bullshit. This isn't fun. This is fucking annoying. Yeah, risk of breaking an ankle running back. Exactly. Elden Ring's revive stones are proof of that. Before players thought the journey to the boss was part of it. Yeah, it's the same thing. Like, you probably died more if you played Dark Souls 2 and Elden Ring. There is a good chance that you probably died more in the process of doing Blue Smelter Demon than you died doing probably any other boss minus like maybe 2 or 3 in Elden Ring. But that probably had nothing to do with Blue Smelter Demon. It had everything to do with the run back. It was awful. So that's what the problem, and that didn't, like, I beat it. That's how I know. It was not fun. It was awful. It sucked. I'm a shaman, main healer, and other classes get less now because responsibility isn't on me. I'm in the middle of an insane mechanic session. Yeah, the gameplay wastes your time, thereby wasting your money. I don't think it's anything like that. Just waste your fucking time. Yeah, imagine redoing Hail Tree every single time you run to Millennia. Yeah, exactly. It's awful. Optimizing builds is a way to overcome difficulty. Well, optimizing time also is. And that's why I think that it's a huge problem that WoW has with how much time they intentionally waste. You see what my point is? Bro, talk about the spoiler devs revived on a toy or something like this. Adds pay to wait. Oh, they're not going to add like pay to win ways to that. In Lost Ark, you don't have crystalline aura. You have to stop the raid to repair. Yeah, that actually is true. Yeah, and that's bad with Lost Ark. I agree with that. And also, there's way more trash in WoW. Like, that's also another factor. Going from boss A to boss B, there is way more trash in WoW than there is in Final Fantasy or Lost Ark. And I think it is cumbersome and it takes way too long. There's no trash in Final Fantasy. There are in some of the older raids. I've done them. I don't know about the newer raids. I can't speak to that, but I know that there is some trash in the older raids. Does logistics not include trash? I think it is and it's not. Too true, need to get to content quickly. Same thing with the travel system in New World. Killed a game called Darkfall as well with no travel. Exactly. So I think this is one of the biggest problems. I just want to reiterate this and then move on. This is one of the biggest problems with WoW right now. Is that WoW has so much mandatory downtime that raiding requires that it makes it unfun, frustrating, and it makes players be much more unforgiving to mistakes. Because whenever a person makes a mistake, they didn't just waste 2 minutes of your time, they wasted 10 minutes of your time. And that's why it happens. One argument you can make is if they're finally on the path to fix problems like that. Yes, I'm just saying that this is something that I want them to continue to do. No, not players. I like rebuffing and downtime. You like having to sit there and cast all of your spells after every single pull? Just a minute. Horde Banana. What's your armory? I'm going to look you up right now. What's your armory? What's your character name? Yep. What's your character name? Here we go. Nope, we're going to do it. Wild Banana on Classic. All right. Let's see here. Craft logs. Wild Banana. Classic WoW. We'll assume it's one of these two. Maybe it's this guy. Maybe it's this guy. Let's assume or hope that it's this guy. This guy obviously is a very serious feral druid. You play the game all the fucking time. You have really great parses in Classic WoW. Without a doubt. Your parses are really, really good. However, how much downtime do you really have whenever you're killing a Nubricon in 1 minute? How much downtime do you have whenever you're killing Grobulus in 1 minute? Patchwork dies in 2 minutes. Your actual behavior in the game indicates that you want to clear it as fast as possible. That's why you're killing the boss fights and you're in a group with people that want to kill it as fast as possible. So yes, while you talk about how much downtime you may want to have, the way you play the game tells a different story. And also, that's totally fine. If you like downtime, that's what Classic is for. Classic was made for you. But I'm not playing Classic right now. I'm playing Retail WoW. And I don't want it to waste my time the same way that Classic did. And you can rest assured, I will not ask for any of these things in Classic WoW because that's fundamental to what Classic WoW is. So yeah, that's my viewpoint on it. Check his last message. Okay. In TBC, yes, thank you. I don't like retail. Totally fine. I think there's a lot of people that don't like retail. And I think one of the reasons for it is things like this, like time-wasting mechanisms. Yeah, 100%.
It's not really Blizzard's fault. It's not the players' fault. It's just the way the game is. Because really, WoW is a difficult game whenever you're doing, a Mythic Raid or a high-level Mythic Plus or high-level Arena. And this is a hard game. So, if you're playing a game like Witcher 3 and you're not playing on Death March or, something like that, or even if you are, I mean, the game's not extremely challenging unless, my understanding is, until you get to the DLC. But a game like Dark Souls does have a lot more meta adherence than a game like Witcher 3 or a more story-driven game that doesn't really focus a lot on difficulty. But the harder a game is, the more you're going to be influenced into picking a meta, because that's the more the meta will actually matter in terms of making the difference between you succeeding or not. And
this is something that's true with pet battles as well. Like, Blizzard got into this idea where they want to have these pet battle challenges where you beat every trainer with, like, every different combination of pets. And in the process of doing that, they made it to where there's only 1 or 2 different comps that will work, and you have to play in a super telegraphed way. Like, you have to do move 1, you do this, move 2, you do that, move 3, you do this. And the harder you make a game, I'm absolutely right about this, is that the harder you make a game, the more people have to adhere to metas. Absolutely.
I think WoW has that problem, and then that problem is also compounded with the social expectation. And a lot of these other games are single-player games. So if you play the game and you suck or you're doing a little bit slower, then who cares? But whenever you're in WoW, you actually have to give other people that voluntarily want to play with you. And who would want to play with somebody who's handicapping themselves and holding back the entire team? And so you have the social pressure aspect and also the difficulty aspect, which makes WoW a very, very meta-heavy game, meta-driven game.
WoW is the most meta-driven game that I've ever played. And I think also another reason why WoW is super meta-driven is because we have so many tools to evaluate performance. Like, so many players, everybody runs damage meters, everybody knows what logs are, and I think that's another big reason.
And I don't think Blizzard can ever really stop that. I think that the best thing that Blizzard can do is just keep changing the meta regularly without necessarily causing resentment to players who have picked the previous.
And this is something they didn't do with Shadowlands, because, like, the meta stayed the same for, like, the first year of the game because it got no updates.
Meta, and just keeping things fresh and keeping them new. And as long as Blizzard does that, I feel like people will appreciate being able to swap around and do different things. And I think also the ease of access of being able to play different characters actually really works in that favor. Because I remember whenever, I think this is patch 4.3, and this is back in Cataclysm, whenever they removed the cooldown on Chain Lightning, and every single person
that's whenever I started playing
on
my
the PTR for the 4.3 PTR was just sitting in Stormwind on like a Draenei Paladin, spamming Chain Lightning at the target. That means like they're Darth Sidious. And
it was
I
a good
remember
time.
Thinking to myself, fuck, it's time to level Barbecue Beard. That's my shaman.
That's exactly
and I did,
whenever I
and
did.
It was so fun to play my shaman then. I used to love it. And it was the same in Cataclysm. Yeah, that was in Cataclysm, right? And I think it might have been later, somewhere around in that time period. And it was so fun. So giving people that option to just go and play another character without having all these other barriers to entry that are artificially created.
And I think this is true, right? With Shadowlands, that Shadowlands was a lot better than BFA in this regard.
Azerite, like your corruptions, like your, necklace, like, all these things, and just being able to play the game. Gear is gear, damage is damage, the game is the game, and fun is fun. I think that's really what Shadowlands has to offer, and I think they've done a great job on it. So for a lot of you guys...
And I think that at this point, I was right. Because you've got to keep in mind, this is right whenever Castle Nathria came out. And would you guys agree with me whenever I say that at the beginning of Shadowlands, the game was in a good state? Was it lit? It's hard to say if the game was lit, but it was good. It was in a good spot. People were happy with the game. They were hopeful for the future of the game. It was okay. Not lit, but good. Yeah.
You haven't really been playing the game a whole lot. I'd say that, how do you rate a game? How do you say a game is worth its money? Is it 40 hours of gameplay? I think that's usually the benchmark a lot of people use. I've gotten way more than that out of Shadowlands, and I've had a lot of fun. Would I recommend the game? I'd say so. Yeah, I think it's actually a good expansion.
And I think this is always true. If you value your time at $1 an hour, you will get your money's worth. No. I was right. I was fucking right. I said the same thing about New World. I said the same thing about every other MMO, is that if you value your time at $1 an hour and you are interested in playing MMOs, New World on release even, or Shadowlands at any point in time, you would probably get your money's worth. I have said this for a long time. Say the same thing? Holy God. Yeah, because we're both right. Objectively right? You don't know the difference between subjective and objective? No. I think that you don't know the difference between me being right and you being wrong. So I'm right about this. That's the difference. Number one. Number two, it's obvious. Absolutely fucking obvious that if a lot of the people that are playing the game and they are complaining about no content in the game, many of these people have got more content out of the game already than many other single-player games. I am not wrong. And Faru, thanks for 5 subs. I appreciate that.
Just a few things that I'm not really a big fan of. As I said, covenant restrictions, conduit restrictions, kind of annoying. And then also on top of that, not really a big fan of not having Master Loot and Guild Raids, especially for Mythic. But overall, I think it's definitely not just a step in the right direction. I think that it's a lot of steps in the right direction. And
Shadowlands was a lot of steps in the right direction. I mean, from BFA, from BFA into Shadowlands, was it a lot of steps in the right direction? I think so. Yeah, from BFA, I think that BFA was a pretty big improvement.
I've said this before, that WoW needed something to really kind of change things up and really kind of flip the script on the game to make it feel new, because everybody's just constantly, okay, new WoW expansion, 10 more levels, 3 more raids, 10 more dungeons. Wow, what else is new? And you have a certain level of boredom that kind of manifests with that. And I think Shadowlands did.
I think people expressed this with Dragonflight as well, that they were bored of, the same formula. Because Dragonflight does use, in general, the same formula. 10 new levels, probably 3 new raids, new fucking bullshit, and it's just new content in the same way that they've always delivered it.
Good job trying to break the mold of that as much as they realistically could. And hopefully Blizzard continues taking more chances like they did with Shadowlands. And the fact is, sometimes whenever you take a long shot, it's like in Call of Duty, right? It's like if you see somebody that's really, really far out, and you'll see I do this all the time, whenever I'm streaming Call of Duty, and you'll see any other Call of Duty streamer do this. There'll be some guy that's a fucking 10 miles out in the field, and you will try to pop this dude off with a sniper.
Doc does this all the time. Doc will try to take these ridiculous no shot situations, like some sniper shot from 1,000 miles away, just to get the shot. Because eventually he'll hit one. He hits one once every 6 months, right? And then he posts it on Twitter, and everybody's talking about how good he is.
And there's a 90% chance you're gonna.
Yeah, he does this all. He's always done this since PUBG.
That is a clip, and everybody is spamming. For me, Bald Shroud, or whatever they want to call it. These are, and so if you hit that long shot, everybody appreciates it and everybody respects it, and I think that's the way a lot of people are looking at with Shadowlands, and it's really great to see.
I think that. I mean, at this time in my experience in the expansion, I don't think that I was totally wrong, but as time went on, I became more wrong.
So anyway, guys, good expansion. And before I finish the video, I do want to say, obviously, most people really enjoy an expansion on release, and then they start to hate it as time goes on. I really hope that's not what happens with Shadowlands.
Well, well, well. Oh, no. Oh, no. Wow.
And I can say that this, compared to my experience with BFA at the same time period, I'm enjoying Shadowlands a whole lot more, and I'm looking forward to playing a lot more characters and experiencing a lot more of the game.
BFA on release was way worse than Shadowlands on release.
So I'm excited about playing it, and I'm probably going to go do that right now. So thank you guys all so much for watching. Really appreciate it. And it's great to actually talk about the game and be a little bit more positive and enthusiastic about it as well.
Imagine
So
that.
thank you guys all so much for watching. I really fucking appreciate it. And as I said, I've got the new phone now, and I've got the new camera, and hopefully this mic isn't fucked up, because if it was, that means I just wasted 25 minutes of talking. So anyway, guys, thank you all very much for watching, and until next time, peace.
That was a great video. That really was. Like, I think I brought up a lot of good points in that video. And I think that contextually, like, whenever you think about everything that I was talking about in that video and the time period that I was talking about it in, I do really think that I was right with most of these things. Like, whether it be like Shadowlands being a lot different, a breath of fresh air versus BFA, I think that Shadowlands was a tremendous departure from BFA. It was a lot different. Let's see here. Do you think you've grown more cynical since this video released? No. You want to hear what changed since now, from now and like from then until now, is that now I play a lot of other games. So it's not that I'm more cynical now. It's that I'm not afraid to just step away if I'm not having fun. Because now we have fucking Lost Ark, we have Final Fantasy, we have New World. I can go play, a game like Elden Ring. That's got a lot of replay value. There's plenty of other games that I can go out and I can play instead of WoW until WoW gets better again. Do you see kind of what I'm saying? Yeah, Vampire Survivors, Fall Guys. And at this time, I was pretty much still just a WoW-only streamer. Now, I would play some other games occasionally, but for the most part, I didn't. I pretty much just played WoW. And I think that playing a lot of other games made me appreciate WoW a lot more. It's kind of like if you only play one class and you always think that that one class is overpowered, and then you finally play that one class and then you realize what that one class gets fucked by, and then you have more appreciation for your original class. Yeah, Fortnite or something like that too. Yeah, of course, I love Fortnite. We love Fortnite. So overall, I think that actually gave me a much better perspective of playing video games, is playing a lot of these other games and not feeling like I had to play... Like, oh, I had to play WoW on my stream all the time. I could just go and do what I wanted to do and enjoy what I wanted to enjoy. So I think that's actually been a lot healthier for the entire community for WoW, is a lot of other people moving over and, like, playing other games at the same time.